Well, that's awesome. We're disturbing people's ears with... Thank you all once again for joining me the second time. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon from whatever planet of country on the planet of this earth that you are watching me from. Technical difficulties, sorry for that. I sat here talking and nobody could hear. I think my husband would say that's something called bliss, that he wouldn't have to hear me. But in all seriousness, what I had started to say, I'm disappointed that it didn't go to air. But in the beginning I was playing, as I always do, my drums. And I was mentioning the reason that I do that is it just touches your soul and it gets you, ready and riled up, and it's just so inspirational. But what occurred to me is a little bit of a sidetrack to what I'm coming to discuss today, is the Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter. And I'm going to tear that apart a little bit and just lay some stuff on the table. But as I was sitting here with the drums playing, I think not even 2 minutes, maybe about 2 minutes, and I was sitting here looking at the time and thinking, I should start now, because uncomfortable. It's almost like the music is playing but the camera is on and people are waiting, and it's like an uncomfortable silence. And as it occurred to me as I was thinking those things, like I just want to turn it off and start, that it hadn't even been 2 minutes and I was sitting here breathing and fine and comfortable but uncomfortable at the same time. So imagine the hell that George Floyd must have gone through in those 8 minutes and however many seconds, almost 9 minutes. Even as the paramedic had put his finger on his neck to check his pulse, there was no pulse, and they still kept it on there until they came back and were prepared to put him on the gurney. So just a side thought that popped into my head of what we actually take for granted on a daily basis in terms of sitting here with some music playing and just wanting to turn it off. So anyway, as I had mentioned, thank you everybody for joining me and coming to listen to what I have to say about this. I'm certain I'm going to gain a few enemies, and there's going to be a few people that don't necessarily like what I have to say, and that's fine. Everybody has a right to their opinion. But this thing has been bothering me, and I think it's really pertinent and really important that I talk about this and I get this out there. I think there needs to be a level of understanding of Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter. So when we talk about Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter, that saying should be, all lives should matter. Because right now, all lives don't matter. With centuries and centuries of injustice against the black man and the black woman and the black people as a population, regardless of which country you come from. The injustices that you have faced for centuries and centuries and centuries, in 2020, we're still seeing those injustices occurring. We're still seeing brutality against the black race. We're still seeing segregation. We're still seeing all of these things. So when we talk about All Lives Matter, I will just lay this straight on the table. This is probably not going to be a popular, nobody will be happy to hear this, people of my colour, but the only people that should be holding an All Lives Matter sign is the black man or the black woman or the black child. It is of my opinion that no white person has the right to stand there and hold an All Lives Matter sign. If you are going to join this protest, you need to understand what the Black Lives Matter movement means. So before you stand there and hold an All Lives Matter sign, think about the centuries of injustices. If all lives matter, the Black Lives Matter movement wouldn't exist. It's that simple. The only person that should be holding an All Lives Matter sign is a member of the black race, man, woman or child. And they know why they are holding it, if they are holding one. They know why. They are holding that for those that stand with them. Any white person that sees this Black Lives Matter and is offended by that and wants to stand there and hold an All Lives Matter sign, you are part of the problem. You are part of this racist problem that is continuing and has continued for centuries. As it stands now, Black lives do not matter as much as white lives in society, within the police force, within the institutions, and across the entire planet of this earth, and in a lot of cases, even in the motherland. That is why the Black Lives Matter exists. So if you are offended as a white person by the Black Lives Matter movement, study it very carefully. There isn't a single black person holding a placard saying Black Lives Matter more than whites. They want equality, they deserve equality, and they need equality. So no white person has the right to stand there and hold an All Lives Matter sign. When you do that, you are oppressing their rightful movement. You are diminishing it and you are oppressing it again. Centuries of oppression the black race have faced. So when you stand there with an All Lives Matter sign in a Black Lives Matter movement, all you are doing is oppressing that movement, and you have no right to do so. That country of the United States of America was built on the blood, sweat, and tears of the black race. So whatever you have there today, you have because of them. So how dare you stand there with an All Lives Matter sign as a white person? Open your phones, open your laptops, go and study the real history of the black man, the real suffering and the real injustices before you stand there with an All Lives Matter sign. Those of you trolling social media and commenting All Lives Matter on the Black Lives Matter movements and posts, how very dare you? Open and take the time that you're using to type that and go and do your actual research. Find out why a Black Lives Matter movement exists. It exists because at this current point in time, they don't matter as much as you. And that is unfair in 2020 after the centuries of injustice. So for you to oppress that movement as a white person holding a All Lives Matter sign makes you a part of the problem. You are a part of the reason why the Black Lives Matter movement exists in the first place. If we look at white privilege, now I'm probably going to bounce around a bit because there's just so many things that I want to spit out. So if I'm back and left and forth, please forgive me. If we want to look at white privilege means that you even have the thought to be offended by the Black Lives Matter movement. This goes beyond George Floyd. And again, condolences to his family, and it's so tragic that because how many hundreds and hundreds have died for this movement to start again. And it's not the first time. It's not the second time. How many race riots have we seen? Rodney King. How many black people have had to die because in order for this to happen? And we're not just talking about current. Go back to the slave trade. How many thousands of bodies are in the sea? And you want to hold a All Lives Matter sign. White man, when your ancestors are lying at the bottom of the ocean, being enslaved to build a nation, then you can hold an All Lives Matter sign. Until such time as white privilege is something that is written in the history books, you don't need to be holding an All Lives Matter sign. Right now, the Black Lives Matter is the movement that needs to happen. And it needs to permeate every single corner of this earth. Every nation, every country, every continent. It must happen now. This can't continue. This cannot go on. We can't have this thing all settle down and then in another year's time we get footage of another black man or another black woman who has been killed and the riots start again. It is about time now that the Black Lives Matter moves beyond police brutality, social injustice, institutional injustice. This Black Lives Matter has to remove white privilege. That white privilege needs to be a thing of the past. White privilege permeates everything. And for those of you who think it doesn't exist, listen and maybe you will learn something. White privilege. When you have a white man who has killed 2 people and kidnapped 1, and he's handcuffed and leaning comfortably against a police car while a police officer hand feeds him bottled water because he's thirsty, that's white privilege. When you as a white man can be another multiple murderer, and you are hungry, and you have been arrested, and you are on your way to the jail system, and they stop and buy you Burger King? The Black Lives Matter movement exists because the only detour a black man or black woman will get on the way to prison is to the morgue because they've killed you. That is why the Black Lives Matter has to exist. That is why that movement is so important. It has to permeate across the entire world. It has to go beyond George Floyd. It has to go beyond police brutality. It has to go beyond just the United States of America. The Black Lives Matter movement has to go beyond just educating white people that Black Lives Matter, or Asian people that Black Lives Matter. It's homegrown, and we're seeing the movement in its rawest form with real pain. And we're seeing it all for George Floyd and the police brutality. We need this Black Lives Matter movement to permeate the brains of every single black man, woman, child. Every king, every queen, every prince, every princess. We need this to permeate to the extent that no black man is killing another black man. If the last video I mentioned Stanley Tookie Williams, and what the police called it was a gang, and I forget his counterpart who also created that with him. They didn't create that to be thugs, as your KKK Donald Trump leader would have people believe you guys are thugs. He created this group in order to police their neighbourhoods because the police weren't doing it. Then the police got in there and created divisions, and that is what has caused the gang life, the gang movement. So we now have a black king wearing red and another black king wearing blue killing each other. That is why the Black Lives Matter movement is so important. You are wearing the same colour skin. You bleed the same colour blood. You have the same soul. You are suffering the same sufferings. So this Black Lives Matter movement has to go beyond just waking up the eyes of the white people and the white administration and the white police and the white society and institutions. That's how deep this needs to go. Look at China, for example. If I go to China, I am treated like royalty. They are kicking you out of your homes in China because of coronavirus. And if you want to talk about viruses, as I jump on another sidestep, coronavirus, Ebola, just think it, name it, HIV, go down the list of diseases and viruses that they have blamed on Africa, whilst it was them who gave it to you in the first place. They introduced it and then blamed it on you. It comes out of China or it comes out of Europe. That is why the Black Lives Matter movement is so important. They are killing you in China. They are killing you in Lebanon. They are killing you in Saudi Arabia. If I go there, I don't have a single problem. If my husband goes there, he has a problem. He risks being killed, beaten, thrown out of his home, refused accommodation. The Black Lives Matter movement is important because we need to say the injustices need to stop across the board. Not just about from whites to black, but black against black. Nigerians against Ghanaians. North Sudan against South Sudan. You are all black kings and queens. So the Black Lives Matter movement needs to permeate. It needs to spread like wildfire across the entire planet of this earth. This goes beyond police brutality. Again, this is why no white person has a right to stand there and hold an All Lives Matter sign. You white person, you can go to any country on the planet of this earth and not have to fear for your life. My husband can't. His brothers and sisters can't. His fellow kings and queens cannot. Your own sister will act as an agent and send you to Lebanon or send you to Saudi to be brutalized, enslaved, raped, murdered. The Black Lives Matter movement is beyond just police brutality. This has to spread worldwide. You see what's happening in Sudan. Until such time as Sudan is peace, the Black Lives Matter movement must continue. Until there is no more children starving in Ethiopia, the Black Lives Matter movement must continue. Until there is no more killings in Kenya, the Black Lives Matter movement must continue. Until Boko Haram is eradicated, Black Lives Matter movement must continue. Until Coney is removed and captured. Until all of the girls that have been kidnapped are freed. Not white women, black women. So no white person has a right to stand there with an All Lives Matter movement when you have never set one single day in the life of a black man or a black woman and suffered the injustices that they have suffered. The only person who can hold an All Lives Matter sign is a black king or a black queen. Period. Until the West, I mean, you have to look at the coronavirus. You want to hold a sign saying all lives matter. Did the scientists and doctors want to test their vaccine on you, white person? They didn't. They wanted to send their vaccines to Africa. Let's go and test them on Africans. So all lives don't matter. They should, but they don't. The black lives don't matter as much as ours in society. And that is why the Black Lives Matter movement is so important. It's why it is so important. And if you are going to join it, you will sit there holding your All Lives Matter sign. If All Lives Matter, stand with them, walk with them, march with them, fight for them. But do not oppress the movement by holding up an All Lives Matter sign when quite clearly they don't. They are sending fake vaccines. So until such time as fake vaccines are no longer being sent to Africa to kill you or to maim you or to make your women barren, all lives don't matter. I'll give you another example of white privilege that I've seen. We've seen it on the streets of Melbourne. 2 drug addicts, clearly highly affected by whatever toxic poison that they've pumped into their veins, leaning on each other, falling over, dribbling, stumbling. The black man standing behind them with his briefcase, his polished shoes, his suit, his tie, smooth. And the police passed these 2 drug addicts and questioned the black man standing there as if it was he who gave them the drugs. The man is in the city on his way to work in an office to earn more money than that police officer would ever think to earn in a week. And you will question him before you obtain the 2 that are standing there clearly a danger to themselves and others. That's white privilege. That is why the Black Lives Matter movement is so important. That is why you don't have a right to hold an All Lives Matter sign as a white person. It's, another sign that I've seen that is also bothering me, and again, sorry, I know I'm bouncing, but we see this All Lives Matter sign, which, as you can see, I'm ripping apart. The other one that I've seen is this. Not all whites are racist. Not all blacks are bad. Now, the problem I have with that is that implies that the whites are racist because of the blacks who are bad. So take that sign down. Not all people are racist. Not all people are bad. Why is it that the black man always has to be associated with something that is not good? Not all whites are racist. Not all blacks are bad. So I guess the ones that are bad are causing the ones to be racist? Again, white privilege. This is why you cannot stand there holding an All Lives Matter sign. Until such time as all lives matter, then nobody will need to stand there holding any sign, because we will all be equal. You have seen the looting and all of that stuff that is going on. Firstly, they built that land. But secondly, how many of those people are white? How many of them are there because this is an opportunity for them to use this protest as a cover to go and rob and steal and create violence and trouble? That is all the media is showing you. Why are they not showing us footage of those black kings in Harlem, dressed in their suits and ties, their hair is done, their shoes are polished, lining the street, taking a knee, peacefully, quietly protesting. They're not showing you that because they want everybody to think that you guys are savages. They are showing the looting and the rioting and all of that stuff, and rightly so. They're people who are angry, and they deserve to be angry. But there are more white people out there looting and robbing than there are black people protesting. Until no white child is taught to be racist, you can't hold an All Lives Matter sign. Nobody is born a racist. That is taught. So every one of those Nazi-like white people running around with their racism, that is taught. Until it is removed from government, Trump, until it is removed from the law enforcement, until there is no lawyers, until, what do you see? The Black Panther movement. The police dropped a bomb on an entire town of it just popped out of my head. The Black Panther movement. They wanted to stop that and control it because it was growing and growing within this small town, and the movement was garnishing it, and they dropped a bomb. This wasn't China dropping a bomb or Japan dropping a bomb or Saudi. This was the United States of America's police force dropping a bomb to stop the Black Panther movement. Why are they not dropping bombs on the KKK rallies? The Black Panther movement is the same as the Black Lives Matter movement. It was about becoming equal, gaining respect. Those KKK rallies is about inciting hate and violence. It's encouraging people to kill and maim anybody of colour. It is there to incite fear. Their burning cross is put there to incite fear. Why are they not bombing those things? Because the police force was founded on the KKK. The police force was founded on policing the black slaves in the fields. That's the foundation of the United States of America's police force. We have so many black kings and queens who want to make a difference, and they join the force with all the goodness in their heart to go and make a change for their people. They will be put in a station full of racists. They want to go and help their black communities. They will be put into a completely white community where the person you are arresting will not respect you. They are making it impossible, and that is why the Black Lives Matter movement is so important. It's why it has to go beyond just this police injustice and the police brutality. We are still seeing segregation in classrooms. We are still seeing black students being sat over here while white students are over here. I went to school with a beautiful Aboriginal girl. In grade 2, so she's 8. Her and her cousin, whose skin was slightly darker, were to be enrolled in a Catholic school here in Australia. My friend was accepted because she is of a lighter skin tone than her cousin, who was rejected because they have darker skin tone. Skip forward a decade and they're now in high school. And I can name and shame the high school. Hallam Secondary College. Year 11, she was accepted. Her darker skinned cousin was not. They were rejected. Until such time as this stuff stops, the Black Lives Matter movement must continue. And a white person cannot stand there with an All Lives Matter banner. When a native Australian, an Indigenous Australian is denied access to education, all lives don't matter. If we look at our here in Australia, and this is why I said it needs to permeate the world, we had an inquest into black deaths in custody about a decade or so ago, 2 decades ago. Since that time, just since that time, that doesn't count the years and years and hundreds of years beforehand, but just since that time there have been close to 500 Aboriginal deaths in custody with not a single charge laid. Not one. Nobody has been held accountable for any black man's death. Last night, a 40-year-old Aboriginal man in Western Australia died in custody. The only reason I know this is because I am also affiliated with Aboriginal rights page, and that's how I know. It's not on the TV, it's not in the mainstream media. If we look at our Black Lives Matter movement, this thing has to spread like a wildfire. We are seeing protests across the world, Nigeria, Ghana, everywhere, and that's brilliant and it's great. But that Black Lives Matter protest, you also need to extend it. Your lives matter. You Ghana man, your life matters. Your life matters. It matters that your gold and your resources stay in your country. It doesn't need to be going to China. The countries that are still under the French colonization pact. Until such times as these things are eradicated, this Black Lives Matter movement must continue. We need this to continue to the extent that no black man or black woman hates another person from the same race, regardless of where they come from, regardless if you were African American or you were African, if you were Nigerian or if you were Ghanaian. Oh, the racism that people think Australia is not that bad. I went to pick my husband up from work one evening and he'd finished, it was past midnight, it was really late, he works really long hours. We had gone and I said, oh babe, we need petrol. So we pull into the petrol station and we're trying to fill it, and a voice comes over the loudspeaker, you have to come and pay first. I said, geez, that's really weird, we've been buying petrol at this petrol station after work for like a year or more. So, okay, so he goes in and he pays and he comes back out. And a whole bunch of other stuff sort of goes down. In the end, I ended up having to go in because he only took $5 and claimed he couldn't understand my husband and all of that sort of stuff. Okay, so long story short, I said we've got enough petrol to get home, so let's just go. We get in the car and we start to pull out. As we are pulling out, I see a couple of cars also come in. So I stopped and I parked off to the side. And I watched every one of those white people get out of their cars and fill the petrol in their car without having to prepay. And he said, let's just go. I said, I'm not going anywhere. I got out of my car in my pajamas, I might add, and I went inside and I tore that guy a new one. How very dare you? He is standing there in his high V. He's clearly at work. He's holding his wallet. But you will make the black man come in and prepay? I made sure that my complaint got as high as it could possibly go. I wrote to every single member of parliament that would listen. And up to date, he still didn't get an apology. Up to date, still nothing was done. That's white privilege. You can fill and his excuse was, oh, we've had a couple of robberies. Not by my husband, you didn't. You white people holding your All Lives Matter sign, I want you to think about something for a minute. Have you ever had a bus drive past you and not stop because of your colour? It's an empty bus. Doesn't have not in service, it's got its suburb, it's got its bus number, it knows where it's going, you're at the bus stop, you put your hand up to say, yes, I want that bus, and he drives past. Have you ever been turned away from a restaurant as a white person? Have you ever been turned away from a restaurant that you can see is empty, having been told we're full because you are black or because of the colour of your skin? I've seen buses drive past my husband. He's being rejected from restaurants. We were in Thailand and it was burning hot. And as you can see, I'm like whiter than paper white. And he was concerned that I shouldn't be standing in the sun. So he told me to go and stand back in the shade. I stood there for I don't know how long while this man tried to flag down a taxi. We didn't get one to stop until I stood there. Nobody stopped until I stood there. We have been in supermarkets where I can see my husband is there, he's to buy meat, and he will stand and he will wait and he will wait and he will politely wait, and I will see them serve this one and this one until such time as I come and stand next to him. then they will ask me what I want. And I say, we're together. Ask him. This is why the Black Lives Matter movement is so important. We need to eradicate the small stuff and let it permeate to the really, really big, large stuff so that this stuff doesn't happen anymore. My husband tried to get a flight once. He was a professional footballer. He was a contracted footballer, so not just somebody kicking the football around with his friends. It was his career. And they were all going to fly out of, I think, Thailand to go to another country. I can't remember which one, for some trials. Scoot Airline took every single member of that group and stopped my husband, and he was told in no uncertain terms, we don't take black people. We don't let black people on our flights. Scoot. This was not in 1980 or 90, this was in the 2000s, getting to 2010. Until such time as these things don't exist anymore, then you can't stand there with an all lives matter sign. Until such time as all lives really do matter, only a black man can stand there or a black woman can stand there and hold an all lives matter sign, because they are the ones who know the reason why. Look at the athletes. We had here a footballer by the name of Adam Goodes, an Aboriginal man, one of the most decorated players in the history of this sport. He retired early because the racism was just too much. And it wasn't just the on-field stuff, it was the outside stuff. Getting called a monkey. Can you imagine my husband, every time he scored a game, he will score. Every time he scored. You don't hear cheering. The cheering you will hear is monkey, monkey, monkey. Is that supposed to be a cheer? Is that supposed to be encouraging? Until such time as every black athlete can step into their field or onto the track or onto the court and not be booed because of the colour of their skin, then the Black Lives Matter movement must continue. And nobody should entertain the idea of all lives matter, because no white person takes the field and gets called a monkey. My husband was a striker, and in one particular season he was the lead scorer for the whole season, not just his club. He was the lead scorer, goal scorer for that season. And yet he was still getting paid less than the man that was sitting on the bench doing nothing, because of the colour of his skin. Because of the colour of his skin, he was not entitled, according to them, to earn what was rightfully his. Here in Australia, the Aboriginal community had to start their own television network, NITV, National Indigenous TV Network, in order to get their Indigenous arts and their Indigenous music and their Indigenous TV shows, and to showcase their music and movies and culture and art. They had to start their entire own TV network, because there just wasn't enough of it unless you happened to be one of the lucky few who had to fight decades of injustice and racism and being given the role of the black slave or the little bus boy before you can get a serious role. Until such time as a black woman and a black man can go for an audition for any role and be confident that they will get it, rather than be unconfident that they won't get it because of the colour of their skin, then all lives don't matter. If all lives matter, then why are you not with them? If all lives matter, this movement wouldn't exist. This movement wouldn't exist. I said it. Those of you who are offended by Black Lives Matter, running around with your All Lives Matter signs, commenting all over Black Lives Matter posts, you are inherently part of the problem. You are inherently part of the problem. You are yet again oppressing the black man and the black woman and their right to this movement. Until such times as all lives really do matter, until such time as we have complete equality, until such time as we have complete unity, then the Black Lives Matter movement must reign supreme. Until such time as there is no KKK man teaching his young child to hate, then the Black Lives Matter must continue. Until such time as there is no self-hate left amongst the black population, then the Black Lives Matter movement must continue. It must reign supreme. Until such time as every black queen is proud of the colour of her skin and stops the bleaching, then all lives don't matter, and the Black Lives Matter must continue. Until such time as the Western world stops sending their poisons to your country, the Black Lives Matter must continue. Until such time as China stops sending their fake rice and their plastic fish into your continents, the Black Lives Matter movement must continue. This movement has to go beyond George Floyd. This has to go beyond every country in the world protesting for George Floyd. That one's been done. Now we need to, this has to explode across every single country and continent, against every single institutional hate and racism. It is about time that we have unity. Until such time as the Western world isn't trying to destroy you, the Black Lives Matter must continue. Until such time as Africa is not sending its money to France, the Black Lives Matter must continue. Until such time as an Ambazonian is free to be an Ambazonian without worrying about his fellow Cameroonian wanting to destroy him because of it. You are all brothers and sisters. If one of you wants to be here, let him be here. If your daughter marries, she goes and she takes somebody's name. She's still your daughter. If your son gets married and moves to another town, he is still your son. So North Sudan and South Sudan, you are Sudan. Until such time as all of these things have come to a head and every black man, woman, child is united, until such time as white privilege is a thing of the past, something that you will read in your history book. Until such time as the black homeless man on the street doesn't get turned away from a shelter to look over his shoulder and see the white homeless man be welcomed in. White privilege is not just for the rich. White privilege goes all the way down to those people suffering on the streets. You can line up at a shelter and be turned away as a black man, as a black woman. Standing there with your child, they will turn you away and you will look over your shoulder and see the white woman being welcomed in. Until such time as that shit stops, then the Black Lives Matter movement must continue. Until such time as Africa is united and the black race is united across the world and the rest of the countries and the rest of the world leaves it to be, then nobody should hold an All Lives Matter sign. The time will come, when the time comes to hold an All Lives Matter sign, nobody will need to hold a sign because everybody will be equal. The Black Lives Matter movement must reign supreme, and no white person has the right to hold an All Lives Matter sign. I, as a white woman married to a black man, fear for my husband's life every time he leaves this house without me. Every time he goes just to the shop even to buy milk or bread, I fear for his life. And that's in Australia. The only reason he has to fear for me going down there and back is because he knows I've got a mouth and I'll run it if I have to. Aside from that, he's not worried about me because of the colour of my skin. This man leaves the house at the same time every day to go to work. When he gets to work, he messages me, and it's always roughly about the same time. If I don't get that message, I start to worry. I start to panic. Is he okay? Has something happened? Is he all right? Even when I know he's left the house late and potentially he's just running late. Sometimes he'll get free time sometime during his shift and my phone will ring and I will see it's my husband. I am mixed with both joy because, oh, it's a nice surprise, and fear. Are you okay? What has happened? Until such time as every woman married to a black man and every black woman and every black man and every black mother and every black father can feel free and confident when a member of their family is leaving the house or going for a job or going to work, until such time as that fear is removed, then this Black Lives Matter movement must reign supreme. Until such time as Africa is the world domination once again, this Black Lives Matter must reign supreme. This has to spread to every single continent, every single country on the planet of this earth, and it must go beyond George Floyd. Until we have unity, it must continue. Until white privilege is something that is written in a history book, this must continue. As a white woman married to a black man, my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, his brothers, my in-laws, my relatives, you are all my family. As far as I am concerned, you are all my family, and I love all of you, and I stand with all of you, and I will continue to stand with all of you, and I will continue to fight this cause for all of you until such time as it doesn't need to be fought anymore. Black Lives Matter. We need unity. Black Lives Matter.